Taylor VanDiest was a newly turned 18-year-old girl who had just graduated from high school. She and her friends decided to say goodbye to their childhood days and make this their final Halloween going out for trick-or-treat. What she did not know was that the Halloween she was so excited about would not only be her last as a child, but the last she would ever see. Because at the exact moment she stepped out of her house, someone was already roaming her neighborhood, and he did not need a costume for anyone to see the monster he truly was. The moment she crossed paths with that man, a horrifying crime story began to unfold. A story that started with her murder and eventually led to the solving of two other
Our story
crimes. Our story today takes us to the city of Armstrong. Armstrong is located in British Columbia, Canada, and is known as a quiet rural town surrounded by forested hills and wide farmland, where the local economy relies heavily on agriculture, dairy, farming, and logging. The town is recognized for its close-knit traditional community and has a population of around 5,000 residents. Among those residents lived Taylor VanDiest. Taylor was born alongside her twin sister Krista on June 11, 1993, to their parents Raymond and Marie. Taylor was known as a bright and cheerful young woman with a heart of gold and a warm smile that easily spread to those around her while making people feel comfortable in her presence. She had a strong passion for music and showed real talent as she actively participated in her school jazz and blues bands. Taylor graduated from Pleasant Valley Secondary School in June 2011, and at that point, she had not yet decided which path she wanted to take in life, although she had recently started taking driving lessons. Taylor was also in a relationship with a young man named Dylan, and she cared deeply for him. On October 30th, 2011, one day before Halloween, she and her friends agreed that they would say goodbye to their childhood by going out for trick-or-treat one final time. She even posted on Facebook asking her friends which costume she should choose, and eventually, she decided to go as a zombie. On the following day, October 31st, 2011, Taylor made plans with her friend Zoe to meet at her house before heading together to Dylan's home, where they would begin their night. But at 5:45 in the evening, Taylor left her house and told her friend that she was already on her way to Dylan. She continued texting her friend as she walked, and at around 6, she mentioned that she would take a shortcut near the railway tracks. Shortly after that, she sent another message saying that someone was following her, and the words appeared rushed and distorted, as if they were typed in panic. After that moment, she completely disappeared. Zoe and Dylan kept calling and texting her repeatedly, but there was no response. About 2 hours later, Taylor's mother, who had already been trying to reach her many times after hearing from Zoe, was shocked when someone finally answered the phone and said that he had found it near the railway tracks. When Taylor's family arrived, they began searching for her and contacted the police, but before officers could reach the scene. At around 8:45, they noticed something deep in the bushes, about 10 feet away from the tracks, and when they got closer, they found Taylor covered in blood. She was still alive, but completely unconscious, and was rushed to the hospital where she later died the next morning from severe head and body injuries.
Is reeling tonight after a young woman was discovered near the railway tracks. She's died of her injuries.
And now a major investigation has been launched into this bizarre Halloween murder.
Police now have a mystery on their hands. Now, last night, Taylor was supposed to meet up with someone, and when she failed to show, police were called. They were joined by friends and family in the search, and along the railway line that is sometimes used as a shortcut here. And that's where they found Taylor, severely injured. Her twin sister wrote on Facebook that she was suffering from severe head trauma and in critical condition, and she later died in the Kelowna hospital. Police are short on details. They confirm it is a homicide, but little else, and no details on possible suspects. Instead, they're looking for help. People are understandably frightened and are looking for answers.
Police began searching for anyone who might have seen Taylor while she was walking, and whether there was anyone following her as they released her last known photo wearing her Halloween costume. When officers spoke to neighbors, one woman reported that she had heard a female screaming that night, but did not suspect anything serious, and believed it might have been someone celebrating Halloween. While police continued searching for anyone who could provide useful information, they were suddenly confronted with a disturbing letter sent by a group claiming responsibility for Taylor murder and threatening that more girls would be killed. Authorities chose not to release the contents of the letter or its details to the public, but they immediately began investigating it as a potential lead.
Someone claiming to be the killer sent police a letter threatening to strike again. Now investigators have to figure out if it's real or a hoax.
We see it as a form of communication from these individuals. We certainly want to carry on with this dialogue.
After analyzing the information in the letter, investigators discovered clear inconsistencies between its claims and the actual facts of the crime, which led them to conclude that the sender was not involved. Police continued searching everywhere, but they were unable to find any solid leads or evidence that could move the case forward. The only hope investigators held on to was the DNA evidence found under Taylor's fingernails, as she had fought fiercely against the man who attacked her before she was killed. However, at that time in 2011, DNA testing required long periods to produce results, which delayed any immediate breakthrough. During this period, rumors began spreading about other girls going missing in the same area, which raised public fear and pressure on authorities. Police followed every reported case carefully, but all of them were eventually proven unrelated, and the missing girls were found safe. Despite that, the rumors continued to spread widely, which forced police to issue warnings, advising young women not to walk alone.
They have not yet identified a suspect in the death of Taylor VanDiest.
Not the news the North Okanagan community of Armstrong wanted to hear. Taylor VanDiest's killer is still at large. Police continue with their call for help from the public, with a focus on electronic media suggesting someone out there was in communication with VanDiest prior to the attack.
What we're getting at is we believe that there were messages sent back and forth between her and friends. There may be some information within that message that will be useful in our investigation.
Some of that information might include where VanDiest was going, who she was meeting with, and what she was wearing. Her aunt says VanDiest had Halloween makeup on.
Her face was white, painted white, and she had some kind of fake blood, so kind of like gruesome looking.
And was going to meet a longtime friend.
Because her friend lives on the other side of town, and it was very common for them to meet halfway.
There are also rumors of VanDiest being stalked. Her aunt says there's no truth to that.
No. I know there has been stalking rumors going around right now, and I just want to let everybody know that no, there hasn't been a stalker, and that I don't know where that came from, but no, she wasn't being stalked.
Contrary to what Taylor family believed, police considered it very likely that someone had been following her, especially after she told Zoe that a man was behind her. About a month after Taylor's murder, the DNA results finally came back, and what they revealed pushed the police department into its highest state of alert. The DNA found under Taylor's fingernails matched an unknown suspect connected to a sexual assault case from 2005 involving a massage therapist in Kelowna. The same DNA was also linked to another incident in late 2004, when an unidentified man broke into a woman's home with a gun and attempted to assault her, but she fought back, and he fled just as it happened with Taylor, who resisted him violently and prevented the assault. What gave investigators some advantage was that the victim from the 2005 attack had managed to provide a description of the suspect to police. He was described as a white male around 5'10", with a heavy build and approximately 20 years old at the time, which would place him in his mid to late 20s now, and it was believed that he was likely a local resident. Police released this description across television channels, hoping that someone would recognize him and help identify the man behind these attacks.
It's the break police have been hoping for the past 3 weeks. Investigators have been trying to find Taylor VanDiest's killer. Now they have his DNA.
Investigative team from the Southeast District Major Crimes Unit have now announced that they have profiled DNA evidence against the person who killed Taylor VanDiest.
VanDiest, badly beaten but still breathing, was found Halloween night in some bushes along these train tracks in Armstrong. She later died in hospital. RCMP don't know who the killer is, but his DNA has been linked to another violent attack, this time in Kelowna in 2005, when he assaulted a woman who worked at this escort agency on Lawrence Avenue.
This suspect DNA evidence matches the suspect DNA evidence from a sexual assault which occurred in Kelowna in April of 2005.
Based on the 2005 attack in Kelowna, police have released a sketch of what the suspect looked like then.
As you can see on the composite drawing of the man here depicted in 205, he had large, distinct sideburns and noticeably thick eyebrows. Again, please note, and the public is to note, that this description and this composite drawing are of how he appeared in 2005.
Police say the suspect may have had noticeable scratches to his face and arms, suggesting that VanDiest put up a struggle against her attacker.
After releasing this information, police received more than 1,000 tips about the suspect, and they had to investigate every single one of them. What stood out to investigators was that a noticeable number of those tips pointed to the same man. He was living in Cherryville, a small town about an hour deep into the mountain valleys, and his name was Matthew Stephen Forster. He matched the description and was known to be emotional unstable and had poor relationships with his neighbors. When police went to his residence, he was not there, so they spoke with the landlord, who told them that Matthew had suddenly decided to leave the apartment. The landlord explained that Matthew had asked for his security deposit back, but when he was told it would take at least 2 days, Matthew left the money behind and disappeared. He also left all of his belongings in the apartment, and 2 days later, his father arrived, collected everything, and left. After that, neither Matthew nor his father were seen again. Police then spoke with his father, who confirmed the same story and claimed that Matthew had received a life-changing job opportunity with an oil company in the north and had to leave quickly. However, investigators were not convinced by anything his father said, not because they had direct evidence, but because his father had a long criminal history dating back to 1969 and had been imprisoned multiple times. The idea that he might lie to help his son escape did not seem unlikely. At that point, police had no solid evidence against Matthew other than his resemblance to the suspect's sketch. So investigators searched the garbage from his apartment, and fortunately they found cigarette butts, which were used to extract DNA. The results confirmed that Matthew Forster DNA matched the DNA found under Taylor fingernails. His phone records also placed him in the same area where the attack on Taylor occurred. The most important question now was, where is Matthew Forster? Police were convinced that his father knew his location, so they began monitoring his phone calls. Steve Forster was in contact with his son, but they never once mentioned where Matthew was, and Matthew used different phone numbers every time he called, which made tracking him extremely difficult. Police continued monitoring the calls without any real progress. Then one of Steve's friends came forward and said that he had been in financial trouble and sold his nephew's identity to Steve Forster, who told him that Matthew would be the one using it. This meant that Matthew had obtained a new identity under the name Lee Sue Cross, along with a social insurance number and an old bank card under that name. The bank card showed no activity, which made it impossible for police to track him through financial records. Police kept applying pressure on Steve Forster, but nothing changed until March 2012. During one of the calls, Matthew made a mistake and mentioned the name of a glass factory in Ontario. From that single detail, police were finally able to narrow down his location.
I can confirm 2 individuals have been arrested in connection with the murder of Taylor VanDiest. On Tuesday, April 3rd, investigators obtained warrants for the arrest of Matthew Stephen Forster and his father, Stephen Roy Forster, in connection with Taylor's murder. Matthew Stephen Forster, 26 years old,
and a former resident of Cherryville, British Columbia, is facing a charge of second-degree murder for the October 31st death of Taylor VanDiest. He has also been charged with 1 count of sexual assault and 1 count of unlawful confinement in connection with the April 12th, 2005 sexual assault of a Kelowna woman employed at the Garden of Eden escort service in Kelowna. Additional charges of possession of a break-in instrument, break and enter into a dwelling house to commit an indictable offense, and assault with a weapon have been laid in relation to a home invasion that took place on October 19th, 2004 in Cherryville, British Columbia.
Inside the interrogation room, Matthew did not deny anything, and he immediately confessed that he was the one who killed Taylor VanDiest.
Tell me this. Do you feel bad for killing Taylor? Good. It's just about getting out. You know, doing the next right thing. You've already told me that you killed her. You already told me that you didn't mean to, that that's not what you went for, that it got out of hand. You told me that you went for sex. And that if she hadn't fought you, you wouldn't have killed her, right? Is that all truthful? Yes. Is it, honestly? Yeah. So, like, that's the big part of it now. So, you know, did you come across her or did you follow her? Came across. Came across? But tell me about how that happened. Were you hiding in the bushes or were you walking on the tracks? I know you haven't even that. Just like to say that was sorry. Can't say.
Matthew stated that on the night of the attack, he had been drinking and smoking marijuana while in Armstrong searching for a sexual encounter when he noticed Taylor walking alone along the dark path near the railway tracks. He said that he began following her while increasing his pace as she looked back at him in fear over her shoulder while struggling with her phone to message her friend. He claimed that he approached her, and they spoke briefly for a few minutes before he suddenly pushed her to the ground and ordered her to stay quiet. When she refused and started screaming, he jumped on her and began choking her as she fought back fiercely, grabbing at the cord around her neck and scratching him, while letting out a scream that nearby residents would later recall, but did not react to. He then struck her head against the ground multiple times and used a maglite flashlight he was carrying to hit her, causing severe trauma to her skull. He admitted that his intention was to sexually assault her, but her violent resistance forced him to flee the scene. In the end, it was Taylor's resistance that helped uncover the truth behind her own murder. He was later brought to trial in March 2014.
It's been 2.5 long years for the family and friends of an Armstrong teenager found beaten to death, and now they are finally getting their day in court. The community of Armstrong was shocked when 18-year-old Taylor VanDiest was found unconscious. 28-year-old Matthew Forrester was later charged with first-degree murder. His trial begins today in Kelowna.
He was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. 1 month later, Stephen Forster was also sentenced for protecting his son and helping him escape, while knowing he was a killer who could strike again.
An Armstrong man will serve 3 years in jail for trying to help his son cover up a murder. Stephen Forster apologized as he was sentenced in a Kelowna courtroom after pleading guilty to being an accessory to murder after the fact. He lied about his son Matthew's whereabouts after he killed Taylor VanDiest in Armstrong in 2011. The father even helped his son get fake ID and coached him to avoid arrest.
Really pathetic. I think the thing he was sorry for was the fact that he couldn't go forward with trial. It just would have cost him too much, and I think that's why he decided to plead the way he did.
Matthew Forster was found guilty of first-degree murder last month and was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. He stalked and sexually assaulted Taylor VanDiest along train tracks, killing her when she fought back.
The cases against Matthew Forster continued. He was later charged with the attack on the massage therapist and another assault that had occurred 6 months earlier. He pled guilty to both attacks and received 6 years for each consecutively, along with his life sentence. In 2016, an appeal filed by his lawyers succeeded because the judge had made errors in instructing the jury, which led to a new trial being scheduled. Before the new trial took place, Matthew accepted a plea deal and pled guilty. As a result, instead of life without parole for 25 years, his sentence was reduced to life with no parole for a minimum of 17 years, meaning this monster could be released sooner if granted parole. Thank you for watching.